Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series on how brands connect with fans in the third space. We're going to be diving into some of the greatest minds in brand thinking from Meta, 2K, and Nike, and we're going to be talking about how brands can build relevance through sports, gaming, and entertainment, and win in the third space. We're joined here with our absolute smashing guest for the first one. It's Rob Pilgrim, head of sport at Meta Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Let's get into it. We've been speaking about this for a while, and there's tons to talk about. So let's crack in. I guess maybe to get us going, be great if you could kind of tell all listeners a bit about your background, like your journey to how you've got to this amazing role you're in now.
Yeah, no, I'm unbelievably fortunate. I think for many of us that work in sport, there's a passion that comes from being a kid and going back to that feeling of what it's like to enter sport. But for me, my kind of origin story, if you will, my granddad was a groundsman for a rugby club. And so I always had this, like growing up, we'd spend the summers on there messing around.
I bet he loved that. You're ruining the turf.
Yeah, there was very strict rules about what lines to cross and not. But it was nice being around that atmosphere, and it's something that, again, I've been privileged to recreate that in a sense. I dabbled a bit in sports journalism, so I think there's a lot of people that tried to get that angle into sport, and while I enjoyed it, I think where I've ended up, and we'll come on to this, is like this whole new wave of different kinds of journalism, creator journalism, or behind the access coverage. So I joined Google, and my big client there was Adidas. So that was the real moment when the sports side started to come into shape.
When was that roughly?
Yeah, so this is heading through the 2014 World Cup.
Oh, amazing.
So which was really, really special, and I think the delivery that between Google, YouTube, and Adidas we had there was really magic. And one of the big things about it that we tried to build was this sense of real-time marketing. So whatever was happening on the pitch, we had sort of a bible of content with the guys from Adidas and the agencies and so on, of what could be released in that moment to fans that was hyper relevant to the moment. Maybe a move away from kind of having a lot of pre-planned spots that you might have a player featured and they don't make it to the quarters or whatever.
England players.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be us. Yeah.
I do feel like it's the 2014 World Cup. I feel like it was the first big tournament where brands did start to have like studios, like they're ready, get content studios there ready at the tournament to get stuff out. It kind of feels like it was a groundbreaking moment for that.
For sure. I think it might have been even like for something like Twitter, the first World Cup with that kind of technology. And so you had all these like new forms of tech. Is maybe the first time people had mobile phones in and around stadia. So it was special and it was new. And I think what was good was Adidas were brave enough to take a punt and try a lot of this stuff. So we had this like real-time war room, for want of a better word, where we're producing stuff, looking at the stats. We brought along a lot of the Google Trends so we could see what people were searching for, that then enabled the team to put out on YouTube in real time, the best stuff. So that was kind of the start of the sports journey, I suppose, which was great.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And Germany won the World Cup as well, so for Adidas, incredible tournament.
Yeah, and exactly. The measurement of kind of which player with the Adidas boots was doing well was, it was impressive to see.
Yeah.
So, great tournament. So that was the kickoff, and that really sparked the passion in, hang on, there's a new way to connect fans to sport here, and a bit of license for me to push a bit internally to do new stuff. I had a spell in Google Hardware, which was really interesting, different and away from sport, but I learned a lot there in more of a strategy and operations role of how to structure a business. But I really missed the sports side. So then 2018, I come back over to work on sport, this time on the YouTube side, which is very much its own business within Google, and what's called content partnerships, which is where I've pretty much been since then. And that's all about how do you work directly with the sports federations, leagues, broadcasters, clubs, athletes, whoever, to help them maximize the products and technology. And then working quite a lot cross-functionally with the marketing teams, product teams, sales, to maximize big moments on the platform when it comes to sport. So taking a bit of a leadership role there. YouTube was great. That was 8 years, a real big stint, and had a fantastic time there. Built some amazing things, notably like the Home of Highlights was a big thing that we were pushing on. So having this place where fans could catch up on everything they missed. We also had an increasing amount of live content. So, broadcasters and leagues turning up to stream where they had rights to do so on the platform was working really well. And then the recent move to Meta. So this is whatever it's like day 37 of being at Meta. So all very fresh, and new. But for me, we did so much great stuff at YouTube, but that was 2D video, and I felt there was something more to do for the fan experience. I believe that Meta has this great suite of products to be able to activate, sports marketing on a different level. And so, I've been really refreshed with the change coming over to the other side as of last month. Yeah.
Amazing. And I can't wait to dive into some of that. And I guess kind of some of what the big opportunities and challenges are kind of coming down the line, not just for Meta, but, kind of in sport generally and fan engagement generally. Maybe just like what a kind of journey and I guess some amazing places that you've been. What are the real pinch me moments for you over that period of time?
One of them that stands out, and this was when I left YouTube, we did the sort of leaving drinks and a few people were there. And the moment that a few of us got together and really sort of celebrated on was the Champions League final with BT Sport live on YouTube, which was mega, right? Like growing up to think that you'd ever have a Champions League final, a Champions League game, let alone a final, on a platform like that was really special. And I think it changed the perception of YouTube a bit. And it was one of those moments that I think when you work on platforms like a YouTube, you don't always, people don't always immediately get exactly what it is, or people might scroll their own kind of sports videos. But when it's a moment like that and the marketing's out there and people are sort of getting ready with their mates to sit down and watch the Champions League final on the BT Sport YouTube channel, that was awesome. And you felt this flood of engagement and eyes on it, which was a challenge, right? Because we were like, we can't get this wrong. And then when we saw the concurrence kind of coming in as people joined the stream, which is, I don't know, even like 10 minutes before the final, it was quite quiet. And then you see this flood of people coming in. It was exciting and terrifying. And that motion stays with me. But, and also for the internet at that time, I mean, you're talking 2017, 2018, 2019 when we had the finals there, we hadn't had streams as big as that streamed on the internet. And so that was really like, not just for YouTube it was big, but for the web. So that's one I have to call out and was pretty special. Yeah.
And I guess, the ripple effect since then, like you say, that was like a real kind of iconic moment in time then, but also like now look at where we are. Now look at where we are and kind of I guess how that's paved the way for a huge change.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a step change, right, is what you describe it as, where then other leagues and broadcasters went, okay, it's safe, we can do that, it does work. And you see others then following the path. But for BT to trust YouTube with that was really special. There was also the moment there where one year we did the Google Cardboards. Do you remember these things? Google Cardboard was literally a cardboard box.
Yes.
You remember this?
I do, yes.
So we went round handing those out at various like train stations around London, things like that. And you could put your phone in the front.
That's right.
Put the final on and you had a VR experience, which now seems quite quaint. And obviously there's so much deeper VR stuff. And again, being on the meta side, there's much more of that there. But again, it was nice to try new stuff where you saw for the first time people trying these cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
It was mega.
And again, I guess start to imagine what sports fandom can become in future.
Yeah.
Like that definitely, again, it started to give you a glimpse into, and like you say, you look back and it might feel a bit quaint, but it was definitely a glimpse into like where things could go and what consuming a sports property is going to look like and feel like for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. What is it for you? What was the moment for you? You look back and go, okay, there was a moment in time or thing you were working on.
I'm asking the question.
I can't miss the chance to ask. I mean, everyone's got one, right? Yeah.
I'm trying desperately not to talk about another Champions League final moment, but it probably is. We worked with PlayStation for about 7 years and delivered a concept with them called PlayStation House on the Champions League final. It was kind of this whole series is about the third space and how brands win within the third space. That concept for us is probably, and for me definitely, is one of the perfect ways that a brand can enter the third space. Like it becomes a content engine for PlayStation across Champions League final. The first delivery of that, it was the Paris final, which was obviously supposed to be the St. Petersburg final. So we had a pretty low-key activation planned, and then Champions League final moved with 10 weeks notice.
Yeah.
And we came up with this groundbreaking concept, delivered it in 10 weeks, and results were absolutely phenomenal. It was it was an amazing kind of activation. I think that was probably the moment where I think we'd kind of unlocked something new on how brands could win in that space, and did something phenomenal for PlayStation that we've now done 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that, like, we created a bit of IP for the brand, did it in a very short period of time, and it's lasted for kind of 4 or 5 years already. And
I think that's it. You sort of hit on something there, which is the lasting of it is what's special as well. Like,
Yeah.
we all love working on the kind of one-off moments, but then when you see the follow behind of
Yeah.
stuff, that's what's dead cool.
Exactly. And we've been able to, like, extrapolate that out into kind of, we've built that into, and there's got a lot of different kind of tenets to it now. But yeah, we've delivered it across 4 finals, and the most recent one, the results are eye-watering. I can't really talk about any of them, but eye-wateringly good in terms of like return for the brand. So probably that. Probably that. The easy thing would have been for me to say, being there when Liverpool won the Champions League.
Yeah, of course. That's a personal one.
Yeah, exactly. Who do you support?
Leeds United.
All right, some Champions League moments in a while.
Not a pleasure that we've had in a long time. I mean, people forget the semi-final. I think it was 2001.
Yeah,
that was special.
Yeah.
And there was still that sort of meme going around up until a few years ago of, I think it was PSG and Man City hadn't made it that far. And there was that sort of Leeds team that was like, well, they made it. So, no, just happy to be back in the Prem. That's enough for now. Champions League can come later.
That 2000, that was definitely the streets we'll never forget.
Yeah,
so many.
For sure.
Especially as an Irishman.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that would be great. Just one more question on the kind of that journey you've been on.
Sure.
Any kind of defining mentors or mentors that have kind of really helped kind of shape your journey there?
Yeah, a bunch. And you're very. I was very fortunate to work with some great people. So let's go through. Like on the Adidas side, Rob Hughes, Dan Baltiel. We worked so close on that campaign. They were super impressive. Certainly, we're talking today about creativity, I guess, and they were very creative leaders that were willing to take a bet and do bold things. So shout out them.
Yeah.
On the YouTube side, there were some amazing people as well. Luke Hyams, who led our YouTube originals, very creative guy, very impressive, and taught me a lot. Lucy Banks, who worked at the intersect of sales and YouTube, did some really creative stuff. If don't want to be on an Oscars list, if there was one I could pick, Thomas Grace was the guy who entrusted me with a lot of running sport at YouTube, was my manager for, most of those 8 years.
Yeah.
And so I look back and think, without him, you don't get the opportunities to do some of the stuff we've talked about, and you don't end up where you are. Yeah. As well as the kind of, the coaching with a bunch of integrity, how to story tell. So yeah, shout out Thomas, big influence. Yeah.
Yeah. It is amazing when you start to, I love doing that, of like reflecting, not just on, I don't like sit and ponder my journey, but definitely love to think about the impact that people have had along the way.
Yeah.
So it reminds you of the impact you can have on other people as well.
Precisely. And you kind of want to distill, I suppose, from each of those, like, what was it that was special, so you can pass it on. Yeah. And I think about that a lot. And I wonder sometimes if your own leadership style is at times a bit of a Frankenstein of all those other people you're taking inspiration from, with your own sprinkling on top of, here's what I think. Yeah. But really special people.
Yeah, it's funny. Even this week, I can't even remember what advice I was giving somebody, but I was giving somebody advice, and I realized, I was like, oh, I can remember the exact moment that penny dropped for me, and the exact moment Steve Smith's the founder of Ear to the Ground, the exact moment he was pushing that into my brain, and it's obviously just in there constantly now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really refreshing whenever you have those kind of reflections. What would be like your maybe biggest learning today? What's like a big career learning that you've had today, before we get into kind of talking about where the industry and space is going? Like what?
Yeah, biggest industry learning, I think from the whole, if I could boil it all down, I think the idea of speed and cultural relevance was something that we pushed on throughout all of those years.
Yeah,
was trying to get partners to be more comfortable with being quick to the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe not everything entirely polished, planned, buttoned up, but not missing the moment, being agile. And that applies for the same for us internally, right? Like we spoke about this before, but you have to live that. Exactly. And you're at the pointy end of that then when a partner turns around and says, yeah, let's do it. But I think that's one thing I see.
Yeah.
And then
it's so funny because the places where you've worked and where you're working now, like, this may not be how you see it, but I definitely feel like a lot of the rest of the industry is like, you're the one creating the speed and we're trying to keep up with you. You're like the reflection of speed and we're just trying to keep up. That must be an interesting place to be in.
Yeah. And
do you feel that? Or
and I hear that, right?
Right.
I mean, say when we go and meet with some of the in sport, there's so many historic organizations, right? Like an ECB or an IOC, like people have been around for like centuries.
Yeah.
they can find it hard to pivot their organization to a bit of speed. And I think they're doing it well. Like, kudos to the guys there.
Yeah.
But sometimes within Google, within YouTube, within Meta, we'll sort of go, we could be faster. Yeah. But it's funny then coming the outside and people are like, no, you guys are fast.
Your speed.
But if you look at like even something like YouTube Shorts, right, which was a success, but it came off the back of short form, or sort of hyper short form content, as I call it, exploding with things like TikTok. And having to respond to that quite quickly was a lesson that agility is one thing, but also maybe like trying to stay ahead of what the next thing is.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of the appeal with Meta, was like building beyond where we are today, not just being part of the broadcast ecosystem, but what experiences can we build that are new, be it AI, VR, the new glasses. And so that personally and genuinely was the pull for me, was rather than respond to the trends, like set them or get ahead of them.
Yeah.
So I think that would have to be the biggest learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's imperative, isn't it? We're an independent agency still, and we've built our whole model on being able to be agile and to kind of keep pace and be at the forefront of kind of what's happening. So we absolutely hear and feel that, but like you say, it means that you then have to deliver on that pace. If it's the thing that you're building your business around, you have to deliver on it when you make those promises.
Yeah, and I think it can be tricky for teams that you work with, and you'll feel this, I imagine, of then how do you give people a sense of vision, strategy, future, but also keep everyone very, very flexible on like what is the moment. Exactly. And I think people crave a sense of like, what's my 2026 plan? What's my 2028 plan? And while that's important, and you'll do this with a bunch of brands, right? It's like proper planning. Yeah. You need to build in that 30% buffer that things will change around it,
Exactly. I mean, again, we try and model our business on that, but I mean, that is the challenge, is how do you build the business to be able to be able to be thinking about the long-term game, but and the long-term game is probably being able to react to what's happening in the real and be able to place your brand and your business in the moment.
I think so, yeah.
You've touched on a ton of things there that I cannot wait to get into. So let's get into kind of the meat of the subject. You started teasing some of this. Like, what would you say, it's a big question, and then we can kind of maybe get tight on it. What would you say are like the biggest changes in fan behavior that you think will be impacting the industry as we look towards 2026 and kind of beyond even?
Yeah, so there's a few come to mind. I think the shift of fans, certainly younger fans, right? So I spend a lot of time thinking about, there's changes for, let's call it our generation, but there's the changes that are really interesting, the ones that are happening amongst younger audiences, right? And that's where a lot of my career has been built, right? Like helping organizations meet the demands of younger fans. Following multiple teams, following athletes directly is true. And I think we heard about it for a couple of years of, this thing might come. But now it feels very, very real. And you only have to take a glance at the profiles of the athletes and their following versus the profile of the clubs. And so, and I guess that comes from, in a world where previously with broadcast technology, you could keep up with the league, and then you might be able to follow the club through some of their TV channels and so on, and their program and da-da-da. But you never really got to hear from the athlete unless it was like a really buttoned up interview. We're just focused on the next game. but now I think with that explosion of athletes going direct, and they love it. The ones I've worked with have always said, Rob, we love what YouTube or Instagram, whatever gives us, because we can cut out the middleman and go direct to fans, and we can actually control our own narrative, our own story. And even ex-players, like when we worked with Ian Wright, was amazed by this. He was like, my words don't have to be sort of twisted or changed. It was, we can go direct. So I think you're seeing a shift where the value of the IP in sport is headed towards the athlete, and younger fans are behaving in that way. So they're following the athlete, they're obsessed with them. When they move clubs, they'll follow. So that's a really clear one. Multiple teams as well. You'll often hear it that people have at least a team in each country, sometimes two teams in each country, sometimes two teams in each league, which would have been unacceptable when I was a kid. But now has become a bit more of the norm, right? That people just have a different idea of what fandom is. Exactly. And it doesn't mean it's less fervent or less religious than maybe what we had. I think it's still there. It's just that you've got the opportunity now to follow a lot more than you did. Yeah,
it's funny. I'm going to talk about 2014 again, because the first time I'd properly seen it, we did a report on the 2014 World Cup around fan behavior. I remember us doing, it was a long time ago, so we're just doing vox pops on the streets, or kind of around the boroughs of London. I remember meeting these kids, and they were saying, oh yeah, my favorite player is, I'm gonna get the references completely wrong. My favorite player is Didier Drogba, but I support Arsenal.
Yeah.
And that was like we started to just have this penny drop moment of this is really different.
Yeah.
And then now obviously fast forward 10 years or 11 years later, and I feel like it's obviously like the idea of fluid fandom is just
yes, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our time spent now on the meta side is athlete first. Like we're working out how we can maximize that for fans.
Do you think the role of the athlete, and just as you talk about that, obviously we know that audiences are building this really strong connection to the athletes and to the individuals. I guess at the same time, we are seeing as a result, the role of the athlete is changing. Like we think of like the role of somebody like Rory McIlroy at the PGA now.
Yeah.
You know, the role of, I'm trying to think of it, or even like a retired athlete like Michael Johnson starting his own kind of sports league, or Mike Tyndall starting a spin-off. It feels like the role of the individual is changing as well.
Yeah, and I think we are past that phase of like stick to the football, which was another thing when that rise started to happen, but the media didn't love it. There was a kind of hang on a moment, don't be talking about politics, don't be talking about fashion, stick to the football. I think we're past that, and so now you're seeing people really embrace it, and that can be fashion, it can be business, it can be music, it can be players having their own songs. Like, so I think people have embraced it, and it's like I think with any change in behavior or any change in tech, there's always that initial like moral panic of hang on, is this right, what's going to happen, how do we make sure it's okay? And actually I think we're past that now with athletes. Like the horse has bolted, and people get that they need to have 360 lives that they show fans, as well as scoring goals on the pitch. So that's definitely the first one for me. I think the second one is then a bit linked to that, is the intersect between sports fandom and culture. So specifically for fashion and music, that you can't now have a conversation about what it is to be a football fan without talking about some aspects of fashion, right? Like the explosion of people wearing kits as a fashion item, is again a change, right? It wouldn't have happened before. If you were wearing the shirt, it was because you were on the way to the game, or you're on holiday and you wanted to show everyone who you supported. Like broadly, that was it, right?
I love that second reference.
Yeah, it's true. Whereas now, it's a fashion statement, and again, linked to you can have multiple teams, and you can wear what you feel expresses you. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that intersect between football and fashion, and there's organisations that have done this really well. Mundial, Copper 90, like people that operate at that intersect. I think. Same with music, same with gaming. I mean, you'll know that really well. How football and gaming, or sports and gaming, are like inextricably linked now. So I think that has to be the other big change. Is that is all blending. They're no longer separate categories. Do you think that's fair?
Oh, definitely. And the sport music one is an interesting one, because I remember again thinking back to some of like the earliest stuff that I kind of worked on 15, 16 years ago. We talked about that quote of ballers want to be rappers and rappers want to be ballers. I actually think that's just dissipated now, and because it used to be an admiration from a distance, but now they are genuinely best friends, and there is and then also we're so familiar now with the idea of sport and music crossing over. Every time there is a kit release, or every time there is a big sporting moment, there is music at the heart of it now. Whereas back then it was kind of like there's admiration between ballers and rappers from kind of across the division. Now it's the blend is kind of and it's intrinsically linked, and I think it's in live events, but then it's also kind of in kind of the big kind of campaign moments and kit releases.
Kit releases classic, but the brands that are getting it right, I think, are opening their doors to the creators and artists and letting them in to tell the story alongside. I mean, Arsenal have done a bunch of campaigns at this intersect, with artists and designing the kits and all this kind of thing. So I think that's only going to continue. And then if I were to point to a couple more, one thing that's really interesting in the new gig, this is really remarkable, is the adoption of private spaces. So things like WhatsApp, where people can message and talk about their club, their feelings, the transfers, the banter on match day, But for some people, it's the number one sports app leading up to the game, if you think about it. And it's the home where you can send all the other content from all the other platforms, but you have this distinct group that might be, your brother, your mate, someone you used to work with that follow the same club. And that's the hub of everything. Is really interesting, and it's almost a hark back to the old days of like football forums and this kind of thing. But I think that's a space to watch as well. WhatsApp has 3 billion monthly active users. Like, it's mega.
3 billion.
3 billion, and in Europe we feel it a lot more, right? Like when you go to the US, It's big, but it's not as big. But
Yeah.
around the world, it's mega. You know, people using it for all sorts of like business solutions and things. So
Yeah. From
yeah.
a football fan perspective, you know, or not even football fan, sorry, but kind of sports fan perspective, we've been looking at this, an awful lot, and that usage, that idea of it being intrinsically part of the build up to the game, but also what is happening in the game.
Yeah.
Like second screening has obviously been spoken about for a long time, but like so much of what we see whenever we kind of track day in the lives of fans, really a lot of that second screen is just different WhatsApp interactions when the game is happening, and it's people diving in and out of different WhatsApp groups, either fans of the same team or their mates or a team that they used to play in, and it's where so much discovery seems to happen.
Yeah.
I guess like what are the opportunities for brands or rights holders or kind of how does the product come into life from that perspective?
Yeah, no, that's the big question, I think, is how do you maximize it? A couple of thoughts, and again, these are sort of initial reactions. So you've got the 3 billion monthly active users on WhatsApp. 1 billion of those are using WhatsApp channels. So these are where, as a rights holder or a club or even an athlete, you can have a dedicated channel where fans can jump in and follow, you know, without necessarily contributing, you know, and you can post your content there that's very easy to pick up and share on to your other groups. Right? So you can have a group following the England game, you pop into the England WhatsApp channel, the official one. They have everything there, the lineups, highlights, it could be whatever. You take that and forward it on, and you sort of then are picking up content to reshare. So that's the obvious one to start with, and I think there'll be way more innovation in this space. And then secondly, what I think it's really good for is traffic referral. So a lot of the social platforms at large have an experience where people come, they watch content on the platform, they stay on the platform, right? Like that's the driving factor. WhatsApp's quite different, right? In that you can put in links to broadcast, you can sell tickets. You know, it's a place where people are happy to click out and come back to WhatsApp because you know it's a tap away. Whereas I think if you think about, you know, a YouTube, you go on there and you watch. You don't really go and pop around. You're either watching or you're not. So WhatsApp channels and traffic referral are big opportunities if I were a sports federation or league or whatever.
I've seen some, you know, very small use cases as well where kind of brands have built private groups and I've had an athlete drop in, and the reaction you see from that, because it feels so personal then, because it is obviously kind of ring fenced in some way, and that's been a phenomenal way, I guess, to play on that desire to feel close to athletes that fans have.
There was an activation 2 weeks ago around the Grand Prix with Danny Ricciardo where it was called The Chat, and basically you could go in and see Danny and his mates talking about the Grand Prix. Obviously, he's got the best position ever to be able to tell you what's going on. Voice notes, videos, chats. And it was a bit exclusive. It was sort of, it was a closed group for a certain number of people, but you could see that scaling as well. Like exactly what you're talking about. It's like you can be a fly on the wall of what it's like to be in a WhatsApp group with athletes.
Exactly.
So that's something I'd suggest lets you, I think one of the things in your, in the fan intelligence report was, right, get closer, right?
Get intimate.
Yeah. There we go. So I think this is exactly an example of that, where you can offer up an intimate experience, that people crave. You know.
Yeah, and I think that again, it's one of our big learnings is to find ways to get intimate, and it's not to exclusively be intimate, but it's to find those moments where you can feel like you're offering those kind of exclusive kind of TED experiences, but not build your whole brand around it. It also, like, these naturally play into, you know, one of the things, the big learnings we see is what we call humanizing fame.
Yes.
Obviously, and that is what you're talking about whenever you're talking about, I guess, kind of the opportunity where athletes are connecting is, it's no longer just the athlete on a pedestal on a pitch. It's that whole other side to them, and humanizing them in interesting ways, and having them in groups like this is the perfect way to kind of do
and
that.
On the humanizing bit, not to get too sort of broad or philosophical, but I think it's needed. Like, if you look at a lot of the stress that people have in their lives, it's them looking at expectations that they should be like a lot of these people that are held on a pedestal. And what the internet's done is show you that a lot of these people are quite human. Like one of the big trends now on things like Instagram is kind of, I'm so glad I wasn't the only one that did this, you know, little habits around the house or whatever. And I think it just lets people go, oh, great, like I'm not the only one. And so if you see your athletes or your heroes behaving a bit more like you would, I think that's great for everyone.
That's definitely one of our big learnings on getting content that's really sticky on social platforms. We do a lot of work. I don't know if this is something that you've kind of leaned into much, but when we work with athletes, we tend to try and bring family members, friends in and around the shoot in any way, because you just get the reactions where someone's like, that's how I am with my sister.
Yeah.
You just get that kind of feeling.
With the Cristiano Ronaldo YouTube channel, which is a huge launch that my team was responsible for and broke all Guinness World Records and stuff. The best content was when he had either Georgina in the room or Rio Ferdinand, where he was just like totally at ease.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you're right. How do you create those moments where they can be open?
Yeah.
And it takes them away from being a kind of like Sky Sports post-match interview feeling
Yeah.
to something that feels more like home. That's what you want to do. Yeah.
We used to have a mantra which was make it the athlete's best shoot of the week.
There we go.
And that was good, but then it was like, we're trying to make it like incredible. We should make it the most relaxing thing they do of the week. You know, like that was actually, and we still want it to be the best thing they do, but we were making it, to your point, we were making it an aspirational feeling when they walked in on shoot, and actually the best thing that they could have that week would be feeling completely at home because of the people around them. That is exactly what you're describing there.
Yeah. I think you saw it come through with the Cole Palmer, was it Pringles thing?
Yes.
He just like looks so at home in that. So yeah.
And so that was everything that we did there. His sister fed into. His sister was on set.
Yeah.
He didn't see a lot of the script. I mean, we got this amazing natural reaction.
Yeah.
Obviously the jam sandwich thing went everywhere. We got this amazing natural reaction, but it was natural. We scripted it heavily, but he didn't know the script. We scripted it heavily with his friends and family.
Great.
And they were like, he's going to react to that. He's not going to react to that.
Yeah.
And then we got a natural reaction, but we really carefully like crafted it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that was where the brilliance kind of came. And his sister being there and just brought it out of him.
I think that's what fans are going to expect going forward. Like once the genie's out of the bottle of like, okay, great, I can see that they're relaxed. It's very hard to go back to what we had before.
Exactly. And I think, you know, obviously there's place for beautifully crafted content, isn't there, and kind of really premium content. And we are going to see, I'm sure we'll talk about the impact of AI on content and the impact on AI. And I think part of what we'll see is that will in lots of great ways kind of impact the content that comes out, but it will elevate the need for stuff that does humanize and give you an authentic insight into the individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, again, always coming back to the younger audiences, like there's a move away from some of the like almost like brain rot as a category, right? Like there's so much now coming at you that I think people are craving something nutritious. If you use a food analogy, right? Like fast food versus like nutritious. People want to come away from their phone feeling like they've had a healthy experience. And we've all been there where you haven't, right? You've just had things come at you that don't make much sense or feel a bit plastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, if you're a brand, how are you thinking about creating the nutritious experience that leaves people with an insight or leaves people with a positive emotion or leaves people with an action to go do something with a mate? I don't know what it is, but not just sort of light entertainment is the worst place you could be.
Yeah. I love that. I love that as such an easy thing to retain, the idea of being nutritious and not just kind of feeding the volume of stuff. That's brilliant. Well, you said you had a few things to touch on there, and I would cut you off with a lot of questions there. What's the other kind of big changes that you're expecting to see?
Yeah, so I've been impressed since joining Meta at the ambition behind the wearables. So the glasses, the partnerships with Ray-Ban, the partnerships with Oakley. And I remember a time at Google when Google Glasses came out. So I don't know what year that was, but we had people, you know, in the office testing them. We had a hub in King's Cross we could bring people down to and you could try it. And it was just really ahead of its time. Like it was, they maybe didn't look that good. People didn't really understand the value of them. But I think I've been surprised at how much there's been an uptake in the new glasses, the Ray-Bans, the Oakleys with Meta. And the kind of things people are doing with them is really interesting. So I think the theory is put them in the market and then see what people create. But it's a bit like when mobile phones first went into the market, you didn't necessarily expect the flood of content that we've got since, right? Like selfies weren't a thing, or, you know, you could think of a bunch of examples of mobile-led content that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so I think it'll be the same with the wearables. Like an example outside of sport is chefs. So the first time you've been able to put on a pair of glasses, cook a meal or demonstrate how you cook a meal and have your hands free. And so that's the magic of these things is you can record experiences, but your hands are there. Also, what's the sport example? You're in the stadium and you're able to clap and cheer. You're not having to hold up a phone and get in the way.
Yeah.
So I think you can well imagine a world in a few years or maybe less where people go into the stadium, they're having the glasses on. If it's a nice sunny country, not like this, the sunglasses. If it's like this, it might be the clear ones. But they're capturing their experiences in and around with just a quick voice command or a click. And that's a whole new genre of content that we haven't seen that's about to come onto the internet.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we don't yet know what people are going to do with them, but you can imagine there's going to be some pretty cool stuff come. And especially when, more features are added. Like at the moment, you can record like a 3-minute clip. What happens when you can live stream an experience or whatever?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that personally I'm very excited about, is how do we get them into the hands of athletes? How do we get them into the hands of fans, so that there's all this new wave of content coming? So maybe, I don't know if it's a fan behavior one, but you could see how the phone gets out of the way if this project's successful.
Yeah, I definitely. And I mean, I'm such a big advocate of obviously the power of sport to bring people together in that live moment, but then also I guess kind of around the world. And at times a phone can be like an obstacle to that, can't it? It can feel like it. The idea of that not being there, and that's a phenomenal kind of shift, and would change the way I guess people experience things whenever they're there, but then also, like you say, the kind of content they put out into the world.
Yeah, and it's there's a couple of things. There's also the athlete angle, or the sort of budding athlete, right? You're sort of weekend warriors, but people that want to wear them doing their triathlon training, marathon, but you can have it create whole new forms of content of what it feels like to play sport. So, having the Oakleys on and be able to do a golf swing, and it sort of like give you tips and correct. So it also democratizes having a coach in your ear versus having to pay for one. And so I wonder whether the world becomes a bit more athlete friendly, of like anyone can have a go at this stuff. So that's something I think is particularly interesting as well.
Fascinating. Thank you. I guess kind of before we move on, because I've got a ton of other things I'd like to dig into, have you any other big kind of predictions or kind of things to have an eye on?
I think that's the boldest one, is watch the wearables. I think that's it. AI, everyone wants to talk about how that's going to become a portion of your time spent on AI generated content. I'm not sure it's necessarily sport specific, or I haven't seen the experience yet come to life where I'm like, oh, that's a really good AI sports experience, to be honest.
And if I'm fascinated to see the impact that it does have, but I guess I don't know if I don't quite know how to articulate what's in my brain around this, but I guess it's kind of it kind of feeds the need for real sport being broadcast, because there is going to I don't doubt the ability for AI generated content to really impact people and be really effective from a marketing perspective for brands. We've already seen it. I know the reaction to the Coca-Cola AI Christmas advert, there's this negative sentiment, but actually its effectiveness, it's phenomenally effective. And for brand recall and brand studies have been said it's performed particularly well. But I think it will, I guess, kind of create a wave of sentiment where people are looking for things that are real. And sport, you cannot fake sport in that way. Right. And I think it kind of like adds fuel to the fire of like what real kind of sport kind of content will look like. And
it's a bit like when we exited COVID and lockdown and stuff, that going to the stadium or going to it was even more valuable. Maybe it's that you're hitting on, is like, in a world of synthetic experiences, we'll crave the real ones. And hopefully the AI helps power that or get you there quicker, whether it's like makes it easier for you to get your way to the sport or find tickets or whatever it is. Like, that's the stuff that people want to solve for.
Exactly.
But the moment of being in the stadium, enjoying it, like I think you should be able to enjoy that, tokenize it in somehow by capturing some memories, and then just enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely where my feelings are on it. Which kind of brands or platforms do you think of or are currently tapping into or navigating those changes particularly well?
Yeah, maybe we take them one by one. So there's the kind of, what did we start with? Athlete first.
Yeah.
So looking down your report or thinking about who's in there, Red Bull, Monster, those kind of people that have taken athletes and lifted them, given them wings. But like, giving them a push, I think is a really authentic story.
Yeah.
And that was something they've done for a long time, picking up on that trend. Not that they don't do the football clubs and they don't do the big events and so on, but like that kind of picking athletes who are on their way up and giving them a boost rather than going for the top tier ones is really cool as a strategy, I think.
And getting in there early, there's so much value in that. I think it particularly the bigger the athlete, the more brand associations they've already got in people's brains, and then you're trying to compete with that or get past that before your brand's kind of automatically subconsciously there. Getting in there early, like a clean slate, brand and athlete kind of association is so much easier to kind of get to.
And maybe it's hard because if you're at one of these organizations or in the agency side, or even for us on the platform side, you know the names that are going to convince the powers that be
Exactly.
that this is worth doing. And it's harder when you go for an up and coming athlete, but it's potentially more important, or there's more value to be had if you can be brave enough.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of what we talked about today is like bravery, right? Like how as a brand can you be brave? We chatted about Guinness, like in that sense, right? And moving from a traditional rugby brand out and out to entering the Premier League with some clubs. The one I'm most familiar with is Arsenal. Has landed well. And then the story behind it of pushing the Guinness Zero beer, and that people can feel included. So, your mate that's not drinking or whoever can come into that story is, I think that's landed immensely well. It must have been a hard brief, right? Like trying to pivot your identity of like we're rugby beer to football beer.
I was fascinated by the shift. It obviously felt like and was the right thing to do. They absolutely entrenched themselves. You go to a rugby game and Guinness is just absolutely everywhere. It is the drink of choice. You go to any rugby club, any local rugby club, like Eccles Rugby Club close to me, Guinness is what's being drunk everywhere. But that shift to football, it's obviously it is a very different audience. It is a very different sport. Consume the game differently. The idea of a patient pint in football was, but they leaned in on that 0% and the inclusivity that would bring. I think they've absolutely landed that. Brilliant.
So there's a couple. We talked about the intersection of sport and culture. And then you can't look past and they're high up on your list as well, but the Nikes and the Adidas in that sense. I've talked too much about the Adidas, but you get the idea of like leaning into that crossover with fashion and music has been the bread and butter through all the executions that I've seen. And then they've got an advantage in that they'll sponsor not just athletes, but also musicians or cultural icons. And that whole tie together feels like it's really working because, again, it picks up on that insight of like there's no such thing as a football fan. There's a fan of like the whole ecosystem that's around it. So I think those two especially have done really well.
I think it's funny, like almost it feels like every kind of big moment that the likes of Nike are doing at the minute, you see athlete and musician as kind of catalysts at the heart of it, and the way they come together, and they find ones that come together sometimes organically and authentically, or other times they're doing things that feel weird but just are interesting, and they're constantly trying to like tread that path of what's natural and what's going to be really kind of jump out and kind of jump off the feed.
I'm still surprised at how many brands like don't feel authentic for the athlete as well, and I think in some of those cases where you can well see the likelihood of partnering with a brand like that to reach a higher level of performance is good. And so like brand fit to the athlete is just something that is paramount and not always hit the nail on the head. I really like Gillette as well, the kind of crossover with music of that, of having Tom Grennan and then people singing it at stadiums, and like that whole experience was good for a brand that had little to no right to play in that sphere in the first place. But has not just gone, okay, we're in football from the start and it's not just Gillette Soccer Saturday, but now there's a whole new wave of stuff coming over that crosses over with music, I think is also really impressive. So there are a few.
Yeah, definitely. And we were talking before, you mentioned them before, actually. We were talking about that kind of cross-cultural, about Arsenal and what they've done in that space. I feel like they've consistently woven that kind of cross-cultural kind of football to music, football to fashion thread really well.
The other thing is, we talk about this a lot. We talked about YouTube. I talk about a lot Meta and with properties like Instagram, but being open to working with creators, because at the core of a lot of those cultural things are these individuals who make content and then don't always have to be the top icons of music or fashion or sport. So I think being open to working with them is really brave again. And I think the ones that are having success are also branching out to having a creator strategy, or even in a very light way, not just working with big creators, but sort of micro influencers to say, here's some gear, go talk about it. Is another thing I'd encourage brands to do, is like, how do you have a proper creator strategy? So,
what I find particularly interesting there as well is there's the bravery of leaning into creators, but then there's the bravery of actually, and you can view that as we're gonna sign creators, but actually the bravery is leaning into creators and letting them create and letting them remix. It's one of our things is remix is kind of remix of the brand, letting them remix the brand in ways that obviously stay within guidelines, but are taking the brand into their world and into their space. That's where real bravery and success probably comes.
I think the road is littered with people who have signed a creator and then giving them a super tight brief, and they sound nothing like what you see on the social platforms, and you've basically wasted the ingredients of what makes them special. Exactly. So you have to have a framework that's loose enough they can play around within it.
And again, we spend a lot of we're a creative agency, but we have a talent influencer team internally, and the reason we have that is because you need people who can spend time really understanding the creators that you're looking to work with, so that you know what they'll create, but also so that you can create briefs that are absolutely spot on for them, and not be kind of trying to shoehorn them into the wrong area of sport or kind of the wrong activation. We spoke a little bit before as well, but I'd not seen this, but Arsenal's Christmas.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about
Well, we didn't even get fully into Arsenal, but the partnerships they've done in a cultural space by, licensing out the design of their kit to partners, bringing artists closer. If you go down there now, the amount of artwork you see in around the stadium, it's become a real creative endeavor, I think. And the partnerships are innovative. Athletic Brewing's another one, right? Which is interesting with the Guinness Zero, but they've got this whole partnership around Athletic Brewing, and be able to get that in the stadium, which again years ago would have been unheard of. So they're doing it really well. To answer that question, we chatted about the Christmas ad that you'd not seen.
I'd not seen this. Tell everybody
it's
about
like
this.
2 or 3 days old now. So you've had the John Lewis ad, and this feels like almost like a linked response to whatever, but it's a Christmas ad from a football club. I don't remember many of those, but it feels very John Lewis in its energy. School trip to the Arsenal stadium, boy gets left behind, stadium gets shut down, and the kid has the best night of his life between closing time to midnight around the stadium. So he's in the kit shop and he's putting all the kit on. He's going to the box and having like a banquet dinner. He's on the pitch scoring goals and recreating it. And then he falls asleep in the dressing room. And I feel like I'm really giving away spoilers here. And the next day, Saka comes in and he's there and he's like, what are you doing in my seat? But it was really interesting for me because you see that we've talked about it for a while of like sports organizations becoming brands, but that is the ultimate. If you ask people out on the street, like, what's the one advert of the year you can't miss? It's probably the John Lewis one. And so seeing sports clubs mimic that is really interesting. So personally for me, that's one this week that I thought was special.
I love that, and obviously love football clubs leaning into that kind of brand storytelling. And not just kind of doing vignettes of kind of generic vignettes, but really leaning into a story where I can imagine, as you're describing it, that is we talk a lot of Christmas ads about the magic of Christmas. For a kid, there's nowhere more magical than a football stadium with a club that they love.
I think that's it.
Magic lands, that is it.
And it's hard because I suppose if you're a football club, and we've worked with them for years on like capturing fandom, that there's all these studies that say when you're between the ages of, I think it's like 6 and 8 is when you're choosing your club. And so ads like this are trying to secure, obviously it's for the parents as well, but getting kids to come into the magic of supporting a football club. Your brand payback might be in decades time. We talk about brand campaigns and then having people activate the quarter after and seeing an uptick in sales of the SKUs, but like, what does that look like for a football fan? You're basically putting a brand ad out now that might convert someone for the next 80 years to be in love with your club and have season tickets and then pass that to their kids and so on. So it's an interesting measurement challenge of how you measure what's working when you're trying to be a brand as a sports organization, and lifetime value and all this kind of stuff.
And you're having the patience to stay with them, the patience to stay with that with a plan whenever you're in that cycle, which actually takes me, interestingly, we kind of moved from talking about brands to talking about a club that's maybe acting like a brand. But any rights holders that you think are working particularly well to kind of navigate some of kind of the changes and challenges and from a fan behavior perspective?
The Formula One ecosystem is one I have to call out. Over the years, I think with the openness that has come of like slowly putting out highlights on things like YouTube, of having more behind the scenes stuff, of taking the helmet off the drivers and showing you a bit more about who they are, has just been super successful and taps into a lot of those things we were talking about, right? It's kind of like athlete first now. You're thinking about the drivers as well as the ecosystem of F1, but like the drivers first. And so that's, I think that's really special. The crossover into culture, I suppose, in their sense, would be turning the whole weekend into a party as opposed to just the race. So you're building in the sprint races, you're lengthening out the competition. we didn't talk about it too much, but I suppose another change is the balance between like long form and short form. And I think, again, they get that really right. Not just in their presentation, like they have new shorter formats, they have rules that make it more exciting, but it makes it a lot more clippable and a lot more social first.
Yeah.
And then I think they do a good job of allowing, I suppose, the ecosystem to post more of their content. So you hear from F1, you hear from the drivers, you hear from the teams, and then sort of fans can go in and enjoy all of that content and potentially remix it as well. But they feel like someone who's getting it right at the moment. And you only have to look at the dollars in terms of the US rights deals and the explosion there to go, okay, this is someone who's getting it right.
Yeah, I feel it's been a phenomenal success journey since Liberty kind of Media have kind of come in. I think they built a fantastic brand framework, and then they've allowed all the different elements that you're talking about. And it's not an overly restrictive framework, but it allowed all of those elements to kind of to then play within it. And so whether it is something like Drive to Survive, it feels editorial. It's obviously highly engaging, but it is still obviously staying within that kind of framework of what the brand should look and feel like. And it plays out in loads of interesting ways. I mean, I think helmets off strategy has obviously worked particularly well for them.
Yeah.
But I guess also all the way through to some of the stuff you're talking about, like the Daniel Ricciardo in the WhatsApp group, like really interesting activations and ways of
for sure. So I think right through, that's a sport I look at and think is really impressive. That the English Premier League, I mean, you have to correlate the values of these sports to what they're doing and work out what's working. And again, the Premier League are doing very well. How they've lent into fantasy and made that like a key part of the cultural conversation in the week, and the banter around it and challenges for people that are bottom of the league. Like they've nailed that, and the app feels great. Shout out Alex Willis, who's turned the app into like not just being about fantasy, but the whole raft of content. You can now see much more sort of highlights and stories. All the clubs are featured. You know where to find the broadcasters. Like it's really useful. And going back to that conversation about fast food and nutritious, it's a nutritious app. Like you get lots back from it.
It's been a phenomenal evolution in there. We've actually done a lot of work in there with Coca-Cola on the fantasy challenge. And they've kind of had a campaign that they kind of owned that for 7 weeks, and it's just phenomenal. Like it's a phenomenal change as an app, but being part of the inner workings of kind of how they've moved that on has been fascinating. And also, if you've done a shout out there, I'm going to shout out a completely different rights holder, but Aquatics GB and the work that Drew Barron's been doing there to move that from a really kind of unusual, disparate mix of kind of sports that were called British swimming, but included diving and water polo. Aquatics GB, as the rights holders, evolved massively. They've applied the hats off strategy. So taking our goggles off, like a strategy, goggles and hats off. But it kind of completely repositioned a very kind of maybe traditional participation sport, changed the events, changed the way it's being broadcast, brought creators in. It's like obviously a left field choice. I've gone to the right, but it's a left field choice. But I think they've done a phenomenal job already, and it's prime for some brands to come in and do some great work with them, I think.
Yeah. And it's hard because I guess you and I are sometimes on the edge, right, where we're talking to these brands and rights holders and trying to convince them to be a bit braver, right, if that's the theme of today. And it's easier for us, right? Like for me, I work for the futuristic platform. It's like, Rob, it's easy for you to say that. I suppose it's like, how do you as an organization find the right storytelling and the data or whatever it is to convince people internally it's the right thing to do? And I get that's difficult, but I think that's where people like you and I can help organizations maybe just with that.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I mean, it is the job.
It's the job. It's the gig. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We've covered loads of stuff there. Fascinating discussion. I guess, like, what would be your kind of one takeaway or a bit of advice for brands or people listening in?
Yeah, so I've got this thing at the moment that I'm trying to pitch. It's called like the two thumb strategy. But when you see people engaging with their phones and social content, it's something I think about a lot. Is what you want is an interactive experience, something that you can pass on, something you can take a piece of content, tokenize it, and take ownership of it. And so the theory is you've got two types of consumption on your phone or on social. You've got the sort of one finger scroll like this, right, where you're very passive, you're sort of going through stuff, fine. And a lot of apps and platforms do that really well. The other is the two thumbs. So you're there engaging with the content in some form. You're adding a comment, you are writing a message to a friend, putting it in their DMs. And what that does is it takes the piece of content and says a few things. It can be like, this is us. Like, I know you're really going to love this. Or it's also saying, hey, here's a memory of something when we were younger. Like, and it creates that emotional bond with it. So you're taking ownership of the content. And if you listen to Adam Mosseri, who's the head of Instagram, he talks about one of the best things you want to get right on Instagram, which is one platform. There's a bunch of opportunities, but is shares per impressions. So the more you see the content coming up, how are you taking that and sharing it on? And if your content is getting shared in either DMs or off platform, and people are taking ownership of it, that is what you want to achieve. And so, my parting thought would be for organizations, what's your strategy to make your content shareable, ownable, tokenizable? And that's, I think, what's going to work really well.
Absolutely love that. 2 thumbs strategy.
2 thumbs.
2 thumbs up. And then one final question for you, which I'm asking everybody at the minute. What are you most excited about for 2026, Rob?
Winter Olympics around the corner.
Yeah.
World Cup next summer. But there are 2 moments for my region, for EMEA, where we really give something to the world, right?
Yeah.
So those 2 are going to be big moments where you see a lot of our work come together with athletes, creators, broadcasters, leagues, and then across the family of apps. And then again, I can't not get excited about the wearables. Like, they came out, the Oakleys came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so we're about to see this explosion of content. There's way more to come on that. So amazing. Winter Olympics, World Cup, wearables. The W's.
3 W's. 2 thumbs and 3 W's. What a way to finish. Absolutely love that. Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. It's great. Yeah.
Great.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll see you all soon.